No, man, but you got to keep going. What am I going to do, quit? That's not an option. You got to keep on keeping on. Life's a garden, dig it. You make it work for you. You never give up, man. That's my philosophy.
Hey gardeners, how are you all doing today? Hope you're having a great week in your gardens. I'm just out here checking out all the things growing on in our gardens in the alleyway. And just wanted to show you this because I mentioned this last week. We've been inundated with just heavy smoke from wildfires around here. And as you can see, looking at these leaves, there's lots of buildup of ash and everything that's starting to get all over these leaves here, just like I was talking about. This is our one worry when it comes to wildfire smoke in our gardens, is all of that buildup of ash on our leaves, because that's going to really mess with the photosynthesis of this plant as the buildup starts clogging its pores and all of that. So a little bit here, I want to get out and hose these plants off here, this fig tree for one. As you can see, all these nice figs on there. Hey, look over here, check this out too. We've got tomatoes on our tomato plants here growing out here in the alleyway, but everything's growing well. I hope everything's growing well for you. All right, let's get growing. All right. It's Saturday, everybody. Welcome to Let's Get Growing, your weekly gardening live cast right here on the Urban Gardener channel. And thank you, all of you garden enthusiasts and passionate plant people for coming on out here and joining with us this Saturday for our Let's Get Growing show. We've got a great show ahead for you today. We've got a great guest coming up here, returning to the show. He was on one of our shows last season, and just a really great gardener. Does some really fun stuff with some gardens way up on 20-something floor of a building in the UK, and is known as the Cloud Gardener, Jason Williams. He's got some things to share with us here just a little bit later on about things that have been growing on since he was on the show last time, and something really kind of big. He got an award recently, and we're going to talk a little bit about that coming up here in the show. So you'll definitely want to stay tuned for that. And here in just a few minutes, too, we're going to meet up with Josh from the Plant Techie. He's going to join with us for our You Following Me segment here in just a few minutes, too. So you'll want to hold on and catch up with the Are You Following Me segment coming up here in just a few minutes. But yeah, just really awesome to have all of you here with me today for the show. And if you are here with us right now, definitely at the top of the show, hit that thumbs up, hit the like button there, and also subscribe if you haven't subscribed yet already. Definitely do that. Hit the bell notification so you can be notified of our upcoming videos and live streams and Let's Get Growing shows and all of that as well, too. Share with your friends and let everybody else know about all of these great guests and fun discussions and gardening conversations that we get to have here each and every weekend on the show, because we are also a weekend show too. We have also our Sunday edition tomorrow as well. So Saturday and Sunday, 11 a.m. Pacific Standard Time here on the Urban Gardener channel. We've got the Let's Get Growing show and lots and lots of great conversations here for everybody. Last week on our Sunday edition of the show, we had just a really great conversation with Pacific Northwest gardener Cisco Morris. It was our book club. Every third Sunday of the month, we do a monthly gardening book club. And this last month, we were reviewing Ooh La La with Cisco Morris. That was just a really fun conversation. The book Ooh La La is full of all these just really great funny stories that Cisco shares about his whole gardening experience throughout his life, working also at Seattle University and different other stories as well too. Some of the stories about him and his wife and their home gardens too are probably some of the funniest as well. But we talk all about that. He shares with us some of these really, really funny stories, and you'll get to see why Cisco Morris is really one of the most adored gardeners in the Pacific Northwest. So definitely go check out that show and that conversation, because it was really, really fun. Mark Boucher Colbert, my co-host and our good friend of the show, who does our In the Garden segment on Sundays, joins with me as a co-host for the monthly book club, and he had just as much fun with Cisco as well too, because we're both huge fans of his, being Pacific Northwest gardeners. So it was fun to kind of introduce him to all of you and get to have that fun conversation. So you'll want to check that out too. Also, we announced our next month's book club selection, and that is Leave Your Troubles Behind by Karen Hugh. This is just a really great book. Also, another return guest for the show. She was on last year as well too. I've been a big fan of hers and her book that I found through a mutual other podcast and community that we're both a part of and everything too. So I had to have her on the show and talk all about her book last year, and picked her for our August selection of the Gardening Monthly Book Club. So Leave Your Troubles Behind. You can check that out coming up the 3rd Sunday of August, which I believe is, let me double check here to make sure, but I believe that's the 18th of August, and that's when we'll have that monthly book club discussion with Karen, and just really great book. It's just she's got a bunch of really fun activities and different things in that book that really kind of help us kind of center our minds around our plants and get us moving and going in our gardens, and different plant activities that we might be doing just to kind of get ourselves out of the rest of the world and all of this crazy stuff that's going on, and maybe just things at work or whatever, and just, I love the title of it, Leave Your Troubles Behind. But yeah, that's gonna be a really fun one to check out as well too, coming up. So lots and lots of things growing on here on the Let's Get Growing show. So definitely keep following along with us here and checking that out. Also, too, big, huge shout out to all of you who are watching on our replay. Thank you, everybody who's joined with us on the replay, because I know a lot of you can't join with us during our live stream here on Saturday at 11 a.m. and you can watch maybe some other time. And that's the great thing about YouTube, is we do the live stream here, and then it's now available afterwards for everybody to watch as a replay. So thank you if you're watching the replay. Get on down into the comments. Let me know you are here, and let me know what you've got growing on and all of that too. Any suggestions or anything you might have for the show, maybe a future guest you might want to see as well too. So get down into the comments and let me know you were here, even if it's just to say hi. And if you are here too, also remember to get into the comments, ask any questions or comments or anything like that, especially when we get here talking to our guests coming up here in just a few minutes. And we just might feature those on the show or during our interview. It's great to get some of your questions involved too, and have you guys a part of the conversation here during our live stream. So definitely do that in our comments section there. Let's see, who do we got join with us today? I know I saw we got Rick always joining with us nice and early, a day ahead, all the way down under in Australia. Thanks, Rick, for joining with us. He says it's tree day, so he's off to plant native trees with volunteer group. And he says there's a sausage sizzle. That's right on. Excellent. You got to love some great community events like that, especially centered around planting trees. I did tons of that stuff when I was a kid. We did lots of like Arbor Day Foundation tree plantings in the Pacific Northwest, and other groups I used to go out with to plant trees out in these clear cuts that they would do in logging and all of that when I was younger. So I loved doing those sort of things, especially when you get together with a huge group and you're out there just planting trees all over the place. It's really, really fun. Let's see. Sam's joined with us. He says work is taking over my weekends. I know. I work on the weekends too. I know what it's like. I got a job to go to later on this evening, and it's no fun when work starts taking over our weekends. Let's see here. let's see. We got Serena joining with us. Hi, Serena. Great to see you here. And as I was suspecting, I'm not seeing um, Jay, and Jay sent me a message last night actually saying that she was going to be traveling or doing something, but was going to try to be in, but didn't know about whether or not she was going to have internet. So I was worried about whether or not she was going to be here or not. And I don't see her so far. Maybe she'll get to jump in here. But awesome too. I want to tell you, last Saturday, another throwback to last week's show, last Saturday's show was really, really awesome and unexpected. I didn't have a guest, so I came on and just threw out the link for anybody to join with us. And lucky for all of us, our facilitator Jay Dixon jumped on, and we got to have this just really awesome conversation. So you all could meet Jay and get to see our facilitator, who's usually in the comments and in the chat there, dropping links, giving us different things to keep the conversation going, all that sort of stuff. But it was really great to talk to her last week. So you want to go check that one out. That's a real highlight show for anybody who's a regular watcher of the show to check out and meet Jay on last Saturday's show. Looks like we've got Adam with us here. Awesome. And let's see, did I mention Jersey Girl? Jersey Girl here as well too, saying hi as well. Awesome to see you. And looks like Charles dropping in as well too from IV Organic, our sponsor there as well. Good morning to see you. Let's get growing. That's right. Let's see here. Rick's asking about the ash on that fig tree. And I can do that. I'm going to wait till a little bit later on as the sun starts going down this evening. And then I'm going to really just give all of everything a real good look and make sure that I'm washing off all of this ash that could be building up. It was really, really thick smoke yesterday, and it really rolled in heavy over the last couple of days. We've got several fires going on all over, and a really big one right now that people might be reading about in the news in Northern California that's just south of me, which I'm sure is also pushing some smoke up our way as well too. So when that comes up and it's so thick like that, that stuff starts falling down on the plant leaves like that. So I just make sure I'm just getting on those leaves and just washing them down really good and help them wash that off. Other than that, they're going to really kind of like the smoke. It doesn't matter to them. We don't like it. We'll make sure you're out there in any masks if you do live in the West Coast and in any areas that's dealing with smoke anywhere else besides the West Coast, even too. I know there's tons of Canadian wildfires, all sorts of things going on. It's just kind of another hot, crazy, smoky fire season, and we're just kind of just getting started too. I was just telling someone the other day that all of our big major named fires and that really did some real destruction. The campfire in outside of Weed, California, a few years ago destroyed that whole town. And there was one in Santa Rosa, one we had here as well too, that ripped through a couple of towns here in Southern Oregon, and all of those happened in September. So I mean, we're really just getting started with this. Let's see. Adam says, I missed last weekend's great shows. I don't think my daughter would have forgiven me if I missed her wedding. Congratulations, Adam. I did see some of your posts about that. That's just really awesome. Congratulations to your daughter and your family and all of that for the wedding and everything too. That was really, really awesome. You'll want to go back though and check out that episode on Saturday and meet Jay though. I'm telling you, that was a really, really good one. All right. So let's see here. I'll make sure we're not missing everybody. Oh, yep. Rob joining us from the UK up there in the evening there up in England. Awesome to have you, Rob. Thanks for joining with us here. Jersey Girl says, I heard about the junkyard fire in LA. Yeah, I'm not sure what they're calling this one right now. That's a big one. I just read something about it. I saw the name. I've just quickly forgotten though. But they said it's just really blown up. And so I'm sure that's what a lot of the smoke is that we're seeing, because whenever there's Northern California fires, I'm literally only like 20, 30 minutes from the California border. So all those Northern California fires kind of get up into our valley as well here in Southern Oregon too. So, but we do have some Oregon fires around us as well. We had some real big thunder and lightning storms. It was just really, really crazy week this last week as far as all of that goes. Thunder, lightning, fires. Let's see here. I'm gonna see if I still got this up here. I'll show you this one that happened the other week. This was the first fire we saw of the season. This one was called the Salt Creek Fire, and this is just right out that's Roxy Ann, this little peak that kind of sits right in the middle of our valley here in Southern Oregon, and that was the Salt Creek Fire, and that was really, really foreboding. And the picture doesn't do it really the kind of justice, or really it's not injustice, but it was hanging over the top of our valley. It was really, really something to, everybody was like, oh boy, let's hope it doesn't get start coming our direction. But we've had several others besides that one since as well too. So it's, like I said, fire season's just getting started. Just like we are right here on the Let's Get Growing show. So glad to have all of you here with me today. Thank you so much for joining with me and being here and hanging out to meet all of our great guests today. And here in just a minute, we'll get to meet our first guest of the day for our Are You Following Me segment here in just one moment. Hold on. Let's Get Growing is sponsored by IV Organic.
Hi, my name is Charles Malky, biologist and plant expert with IV Organics, where we grow cool plants and author Saving the World with the Home Garden. IV Organic 3-in-1 Plant Guard has 7 natural oils that protect your plants, not just from the summer heat as well as winter cold, but also protects your plants from damaging insects and rodents. The oils in the product include castor, cinnamon, clove, garlic, peppermint, rosemary, and spearmint. These oils are natural insect and rodent repellent oils, which are encapsulated by the base powder, offering your plants months of protection at a time. 1 application per year will suffice for protection against damaging summer sunburn and winter sun scald, but if the target is pests, application as much as 2 to 3 times a year may be necessary.
This is Sarah from Sarah's Seed Shop, here with this week's trivia question. Elephant garlic is not actually garlic. So what is it? Is it a type of A, onion, B, shallot, C, chive, or D, leek? We'll be back with the answer a little later in the show.
All right. You got the answer to Sarah's trivia question. Go ahead and drop it on in the comments there, and we'll get that answer, like she said, here in our next break here a little bit later in the show. Serena asked just a minute ago, how far are you from Sacramento in the fires in California? And that's kind of what I was mentioning there. Sacramento, I believe, is about 4.5 hours or so from where I am here in Southern Oregon. And then, like I said, the actual border for California, though, is just down I-5 from me, about 25, maybe 30 minutes away. And then we cross into California and go into all those Siskiyous, and down even a little south from there is where that big fire is, right outside of Chico, California right now. And it's really blowing up, and we're actually that's really not that far away, especially from the smoke. Like I was saying, it can really, really blow right up here, just depending on where you know, where the wind is blowing, you know, and sometimes it's blowing right in our direction, and you know, we can't help but get away from it, and it just fills up our valley like a bowl. Let's see here. Did you hear what happened at Yellowstone National Park? A geyser not faithful erupted. People had to run off the bridge, and no one was injured. Yeah, actually, I saw that video of that. I can't remember what they call it actually, but yeah, I guess it's a very rare event that happens, and it really blew. And I saw those people running, and I've been to Yellowstone, so I know about that water, and it's really hot, nearly boiling water that they have that's bubbling there. I've walked those bridges and everything as well too. So I was really like, wow, okay, I hope people aren't right up underneath of that, because that would have been a very, very hot shower, and probably wouldn't have been very fun at all for anybody who could have got caught up in it. So yeah, pretty wild event though too. I haven't really got to do much more reading about what it, you know, what exactly was going on there too. But I know from what I already kind of read a little bit about that, it was a really pretty rare event for sure. Let's see here. There was one other thing here I wanted to see. Rob was mentioning not very often that they get very big wildfires in the UK, in which you're really pretty lucky, and anybody else too, is we are really, you know, with the climate warming up like it is, it's just drying up like crazy so fast. We had a pretty wet winter. Someone was just mentioning that to me the other day, that we, you know, and I do, you know, it was a pretty wet winter, but it was a warm winter, and it just, you know, dried up really, really fast as soon as that switch flipped. All right, everybody, here, let's see. Let's get on to this today. We got a great guest with us here today, joining us for our "Are You Following Me" segment.
Are you following me? Are you following me, dude?
All right, everybody. Today for our Following Me segment, we got with us Josh Gardens from the Plant Techie, joining with us here today on the Let's Get Growing show. Thank you so much for hanging out with us today, and great to see you here, Josh.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Enoch. This is really cool. I love the little bumper video you had right before that. That was really
Yeah.
plus all the little clips and trivia. This is very interesting. I can't wait to see what the answer is to that trivia question.
Excellent. Yeah, we'll have that coming up here on our break coming up there. Yeah, we're really so fortunate to have Sarah from Sarah's Seed Shop join with us each week and give us a fun little trivia question to keep our minds wondering about what's going on in our gardens. And yeah, so how are things going on with you? We were on the Texas Garden Guys garden party podcast not too long ago, and had a really great conversation with you over there. So I knew I just had to hurry up and get you on the show here as soon as possible. So again, thank you for joining with us, but also you know, tell the audience a little bit about yourself and what you got growing on over there at the Plant Techie.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks. And I did bring a plant in my office just because I knew your background had so many plants that I felt like it needed something.
You gotta have it, right. We do have guitars though too. You can barely see mine anymore through the Monstera, but we do got guitars as well. That's great.
That's true. So yeah, so I'm here in the southeastern states. I am in the Carolinas, and I've been gardening for about 10 years now. I'm really more of a fruit tree guy, and gardening is sort of secondary, which is really rare in our world. Usually, it's like everybody's like, let's look at the garden, and then fruit trees are sort of like over here. But I actually have like hundreds of fruit trees, and that's not an exaggeration.
Hundreds even. Wow.
Yes, hundreds. I know that sounds like a lot, and it is a lot. And it's sort of taken over. And at first I was like, oh, I'll do this, I'll do this. Oh, I need to reduce. I can't handle that many. And sort of now I'm sort of back on the uptick. But I've only been doing the social media thing for about 1 year. It's actually coming up on a year in 2 months. So I just want to get my knowledge and experience out there to everybody, just to share all the mistakes that I made, so other people don't have to go through those same mistakes.
Yeah, and that's really kind of important. You know, I think we had a conversation recently on the show with another guest about how many people really kind of get into gardening and then they have like some sort of, and I don't know how they gather the statistics on it, but there was a really high percentage of people who actually give up gardening, you know, just after their first season. So, and I was like, yeah, you know, I just really think that a lot of that comes from these sort of things that are unexpected, and especially some of these things that happen to us as we're gardening. And I like to make sure that people know that, not let that be a deterrent, because I like to let people know right up front that these are the sort of things you're going to be facing, and let's expect them right up front and know that they're all a part of the fun of what we get to do and learn in our whole gardening process.
Absolutely. And one of my phrases that I go by, and you'll see this in some of the videos, is anyone can grow, right? And that's sort of a play on words, because anyone can grow a plant, but anybody can also grow as a person through the process of planting. And there's a lot of symbolism there. There's a lot of mental health stuff there. And so for me, it's really changed my perspective on the world and how I interact with people, just by what I've learned from going through growing plants. And so that's my phrase. Anyone can grow, right? You can do it. Anybody. If I can do it, you can do it.
Yep. And I always say too, that's another thing I kind of say too, is I think there's a green thumb inside of everybody. I never buy into the brown thumb idea. I think that anybody can really find that green thumb inside of them. And I always say, and actually, I was mentioning we had the guest Cisco last week too, and he actually mentioned this on the show last week, was that go out and kill some plants. You know what I mean? That's, I've killed more plants than I've actually grown. And as a gardener, it's kind of a whole part of the process, learning how to maintain a good garden and all of that. It's kind of required.
Yeah, that's really where the rubber meets the road is. After you kill some plants, do you get back up and plant some more plants? I mean, I think
Exactly.
I'm on my third almond tree here. I don't know why. I've just struggled with almond trees, and I'm going to get it.
Citrus for me.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. I love citrus is a personal passion of mine. I probably have 24 citrus trees in containers, and I've been carting them in and out of my garage every winter. I built these 4x8 rolling carts.
Yes.
These 5-inch casters. It's probably 200 pounds each. And every winter, two of them, roll them in when it gets below 40 degrees, and I roll them out when it's sunny out, because it gets freezing here and they'll kill them.
Exactly.
So, but having fresh citrus, I actually brought one in. I was going to mention, this is a little Mawa kumquat. I don't know if you've heard of kumquats.
I have, yes.
Yeah,
I love citrus too. They would be, and probably still can be. I talked with Tom Spellman, and we did a tree roundtable a few weeks back. And during that conversation, I was really like telling myself, okay, I got to gear up and I got to get back on the horse with citrus. And really, it was years ago that I tried it. I tried a few different plants that really weren't very good as far as my zone, so I need to be a little bit more aware of maybe some little more cold hardier things to get started with. And then again too, I don't have a garage necessarily, but I've got some areas, and I think that was a part of my process of learning, was figuring out how to get it surviving during the winter time. So I failed those first few times and then got off of it, was like, okay, wait a minute, let's go with other types of trees that are maybe a little more easier going for me. I've got a great peach tree that's out there. It's got a bunch of really good peaches growing in a container, a little frost peach tree. We've got some pears that haven't produced yet, but I've only had it for, I think this is its second or third, maybe third season.
They take time. Yeah, pears take time.
And I guess I might need another one.
Well, it depends on the type. Some of them are
red D'Anjou. It's a red D'Anjou.
I'd have to look that one up. Most of the European ones do require a pollinator. Some of the Asian ones don't.
Okay.
So, yeah.
All right. Yeah.
It depends. It depends on the type.
Yeah. So I know there are a few things I need to do that, but I got a couple of apples in containers on my back patio that are doing amazing. And they saw in
Wow.
the clip at the beginning of the show, we've got the figs out there. The figs are looking good and producing. I've got
Yeah.
one little tiny fig branch that's been giving me trouble. I thought it was dead in a pile. It actually was still alive. So I've got it in a new pot and everything, but it's actually got one little fig on it right now too. So I'm like, so like figs are doing great this year, you know, even if you
Awesome.
count that one too. So
It's huge, minus the ash, which somebody was asking
yeah.
about the ash. I mean, I don't think the
Mhm.
ash really bothers them too much. I know with citrus, when I bring them inside, they say you don't want to let the dust build up because it reduces the photosynthesis. So I do like wash off the leaves on my
Yeah.
citrus if it's been a couple weeks, just so that that dust there. So I would imagine that ash acts the same way, where it just blocks some of that photosynthesis. So a good firm
Yeah.
spraying might
Yeah. I
help. I
have
don't know.
like, I noticed though, it really does like with any of my, in which I haven't noticed with any of like say the fig or anything, but any of like cucumbers, the curcubits, any of those sort of leaves, those sort of things with any ash buildup is similar. Like it really starts to yellow them, and they start to really have some trouble with that. So I notice with those for sure. Really, so I guess it just kind of depends on the leaf type, maybe a little bit more so about how resistant it can be to some of that buildup. But it's buildup, you know, and in the long run, whether it's any other sort of thing, it's just really we don't. I just
Yeah.
I'd rather give my plants a better opportunity to do whatever might be any issue like that when it comes down to it. And then again, too, like I was saying, it ain't any other issue that's a problem when it comes to smoke and all that. Our plants actually love that stuff. They get green and you know, and to them it's no problem. It's more of a bothersome issue for us.
Yeah. Well, you mentioned you had a couple pears. I actually brought some pears in
Oh, excellent.
from the garden today, and these are two different types.
Oh,
This
yes, look at
is a
those.
European. This is a very standard pear. It's a Bartlett pear,
Yeah.
so you'll see very common, probably the most common European pear. And then this one is a Hosu Asian pear. Which what I like about the Asian pears is that they're crispy like an apple. They're not
Yeah.
mushy, but sweet
Mhm.
like a pear. So you could just take a bite out of it, and it's. And the other thing is, like, these you really need to leave on the counter for a week before
Yeah.
they are actually pretty decent tasting. These you can pick like right off the tree. So just two options. I was
Yeah, yeah.
like, you mentioned pears, because I was like, I had them right here.
Yeah, exactly. I've had one of those ones that are more like in really got that apple kind of texture. It's just, yeah, and they are really good. Actually, I got a handful of those from someone at the National Heirloom Exposition this last year, and they were really good. So I do recommend those too as well. Those are good. Right
Nice.
on, right on, right on. Like you said, you do mostly trees, but you also have a regular garden as well too. What are some of those? So, what are some of those things that are really growing well in your garden this year?
Yeah. So I'm on my third iteration of a garden, and I'm sort of like a trial and error guy. Like, let's see what works, right? My first garden, I did like wooden
Yeah,
raised beds. They rotted out. They were real low. And I did container growing for a few years, which was fun, but like had landscape fabric that got overgrown. And so now I'm on those really tall Vigo garden raised beds, the metal ones, which are like 31 inches. So I have like very little weeds. It's excellent drainage. So I've got 8 beds, and they're just taking out a lot of really good vegetables. I mean, they're putting out in terms of just tomatoes, cucumbers. I've started this year. I'm really experimenting with English cucumbers and Armenian striped cucumbers, which are really long.
yeah.
So those are really fun on like an arch trellis. That's so I had one that was literally like 3.5 feet long. It was
Oh,
unbelievable.
nice.
That was
Yeah,
pretty neat. And then my favorite.
I think I like those ones almost better than just like your standard cucumber. I like cucumbers of all sorts. My favorite really is the lemon, but those big long English ones, like they are just really delicious cucumbers.
Yeah, and they're very smooth, very few seeds. Like you can get a lot out of one
Mhm.
cucumber. So I'm going to do those every year moving forward, in addition to the usual pickling and market more, standard slicers.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, the garden's been great this year. I mean, I haven't had many complaints. I really, it's my second year doing those really tall raised beds, and the second year is actually much better than the first. And I think that's because the soil settled down and everything's
Mhm.
sort of like getting, working itself out in terms of the mulch I had last year. It's rotting down enough
Exactly.
to where it's feeding the soil. So it's been great. It's been a great year.
Yep. Another first time gardener thing I always tell people, if you're just building out your raised beds or just getting them started, always be aware that your first year is not going to be as good as your second year. Your second year is not going to be as good as your third year. Those are but we're working our way up. We're building soil, and that's exactly what's happening as things are breaking down. That soil biology, that soil life is really starting to kick into gear in that second year, and really so in the third year. If you're just really kind of following like kind of what I recommend and teach, is just kind of layering out compost and just kind of adding to the top, and just kind of keep doing that each season and let that kind of break down and work, and it's beautiful.
Absolutely. Yeah, you got to top dress every year. This year I did this new organic fertilizer that I had never used before, and then a good 2-inch layer of compost, and everything just blew up really quickly. So it definitely helped.
Yeah. Rob says the best English long cucumber is called Carmen. I'm gonna have to look for that one specifically.
Okay.
Yeah, those ones are great. I love the long English cucumbers, like you're saying. That's great.
There was one
Great.
other that I grow, not a cucumber, but it's called a ground cherry. I don't know if you've heard of those. They look like tomatillos.
Yep.
And I've probably gotten 1,000 ground cherries between 4 plants. And that's actually not an exaggeration, because they just keep going. They sort of have this sprawling habit, and then they fall to the ground. That's when they're the sweetest. And then even then you can leave them on the counter for a week and they'll just continue to get sweeter in these little husks. Oh man, it's so good.
I love the ground cherries. And similar to tomatillos. Then again too, is that they'll also, I don't know if you noticed them popping up. Have you gotten volunteers from them, or is this the first year growing yet?
No.
If you grew them last year, you would probably notice they come up like weeds the next year.
Yep.
Same with your tomatillos. I had a neighbor grow one tomatillo. I hadn't grown tomatillos myself. He grew one tomatillo in his yard, a yard or so away from me. And because of whatever, maybe a bird or something like that, I had them in my soil the next year, and they popped up all over the place. So I grew one of them and let one of them grow, but I weeded out the rest of them. And then the next year I just, boom, they were all over the place. And but they're still good though. But again, it's one of those things you got to, sometimes even the plants we love become weeds.
Unfortunately. Just like passion flower, or passion vine. If you've ever grown that.
I haven't, but I love those flowers so much.
Once it starts growing, it's hard to kill it, because even if you cut it back to the ground, it might pop up 10 feet away from there. So you got to be careful. Yeah.
There's just certain things that are like that. Yeah, you got to be careful, and sometimes it takes a little bit of time to get them extricated from your garden space, because they'll have an invasive attitude until you kind of get them kind of weeded out after. And then sometimes I've had a couple of plants it's taken me like 2-3 seasons to get them out.
Wow.
Definitely be careful planting raspberries in any sort of space. That was a lesson I learned early on. Because as a new gardener, we just go, oh, I'll put a little bit of this over here, a little bit of this over there. It took me 3 years to get that raspberry out of that space.
Cool.
Right on, Josh. Well, let's see here. What else you got growing on there over at the Plant Techie? Tell us a little bit more about that. I know, again, actually, real quick before you do that, I will say it feels like, because we talked a little bit about this on the show we were on before too, but I felt like I've known you a little bit longer for some reason, because I must have caught on to when your content was just coming out or something. I must have, because I feel like I'd been seeing you around for a little while. So I was really kind of surprised that you'd only been around for the last year, which is really kind of great. And again, too, with the content and everything that you make and you produce and everything is just really great. And just for just only being around for a year, I think is just really awesome. I think you're doing just such an amazing job with what you're doing. And again, one of the main reasons why I really wanted to make sure I got you on as soon as we could too. So yeah, tell us a little bit more about the Plant Techie. Tell us a little bit more about what you got growing on, and some of these things that you have going. I know you were talking, in fact, you mentioned here too a little bit about some digital products and an ebook and stuff like that as well. So maybe tell a
Yeah,
little bit about that.
absolutely. Well, and the reason I went with the plant techie is because my day job, I'm in IT, and
Okay.
I'm always
Yeah.
actually was an audio engineer for a while, an AV engineer. And so I've done a lot of like really technical jobs, and I wanted to bring sort of some technical skills and technical toys, I guess, into the growing world. And that's one side that I'm working on. And so I actually created an ebook. My first ebook I put out, and it's all about portable orchards, so growing fruit trees in containers, just like this one
Mhm.
here, sort of keeping them alive. And it's free. You can go to my link tree and download it. So if any of your viewers want to go to my link tree on any of my socials, you'll see that in the link in the bio. And the other part of my name, and I'm still sort of figuring out like who I am in this space, is Uncle Josh Gardens. And the reason is I've
Mhm.
nephews, they all call me like Uncle Josh,
Right,
and
right.
and it's sort of fun. We talk about safety, and they help me do chores and things
I
like
love
that.
it. I like it.
So, so it's fun. I really want to bring like a fun, wholesome, playful side to the space, and just you know talk about my mistakes, talk about funny things, just for show my pets, and I like
Yeah.
the human nature of it. That it's not just like here's this fact, but like here's
Mhm.
me, and here's some funny things that I did, and oh yeah, look at this cool plant that I grew, and maybe you could try that too. So that's my whole
Exactly.
spiel.
Yeah, yeah. I feel I kind of have that similar kind of attitude towards what I'm, doing and how I'm growing my own space on YouTube and other social media as well too. Is under that same kind of thing. It's just kind of like I'm just a gardener out here gardening and growing, and I've been learning things for a while. Maybe just I've been gardening, I think about 13 years or so that I've been growing food gardens is the thing. I've been growing plants my whole life since I was a young kid, but food gardens for about 13 years now. And so a little bit of experience, and some fun, different types of spaces. I got these fun little small spaces. And so I just want to kind of take people along and show them my cats and stuff, and and kind of make it a personable kind of garden adventure more so than I'm really here teaching things. That's what the fun of the show is then I get to really bring some cool teachers onto the show and get to really have some good garden education and meet people and all that sort of stuff. But yeah, yeah. So let's see, you got any really cool events or anything like that, or are you going to be doing
Yeah,
here in the future?
I do,
Speaking
and
or
I
anything?
forgot to mention too. After that ebook, I actually have something coming up as well. I'm going to be releasing like a mini course on your first fruit tree, so how to grow
Yeah.
your own first fruit tree. Maybe you're a beginner, you don't know where to start. This would be a good course just to lay the foundation of how to do it properly to make sure that it actually lives and gives you fruit down the road. So that's coming out in the next few weeks. And then I've got some events. I'm speaking at this fall vegetable garden summit that's going to
Mm,
be coming out here in, I believe, August, and so that's going to be really exciting. Yeah, just a couple things going on. I'm actually working on becoming a master gardener. Is something that
excellent.
I've been just starting down that process, and I pitch in a lot in my local community garden. I spoke there in the spring. I'm going to be speaking there again
Great.
in the fall, and just I actually provided a lot of the plants and show people how to plant, and we did a little workshop. So I really just like getting out there and interacting with people in person whenever I can.
Yeah, that's awesome. I love the work in the community garden. That's something that I'm always encouraging people to do. So again, a great place to build community around gardening. Just as we say here in the show, we're building community through gardening, and no better place than a community garden, right? And what a great place to go hang out with people who are like-minded and want to sit and hang out and talk about tomatoes and cucumbers and and fruit trees and all of that sort of stuff, which is just really, really awesome. Everything we love to do here, right here on our show as well. So again, Josh, thank you so much for joining with us here today, man. Just really great
Yeah.
to get to catch up with you here, and we'll have to have you back on maybe for one of our Sunday shows or something, and do a roundtable and talk about some container fruit trees and do that maybe after your ebook comes out or something. We'll talk a little bit more about that as well too, because I think there's some really good information to get learning about there. I know I could use too as well. Maybe you can help me get encouraged to get back into doing some citrus again.
You can do it. I believe in you. Citrus are not that hard, but one of the I really appreciate you just connecting everybody in the community. I think it's a really cool thing that you're doing with this podcast and just bringing everybody in. And it's just, I don't know. I think that's a missing link in our world. Everybody's just very, one-on-one, right to, the people watching, but you're sort of bringing in the community of the growers, and I really appreciate that. So thank you for what you do.
Well, I appreciate that as well too. That was really kind of the just the big goal, and the idea was to kind of, do some. I was really fortunate enough to have known a few people before I got the show started, so it really was kind of really kind of a great way, I think, again, to really introduce people to newer gardeners and gardeners out there creating content like yourself that people might not know about, but then also get to know some people and some other gardeners out there doing some really cool things in the gardening community. So I think it's just a really great thing for us to be able to do, to have these conversations and to, just to kind of interact and, again, building some community.
Exactly. Awesome. Well, thanks so much for having me on. This has been great.
Excellent, Josh. It has really been great to have you on, and we definitely look forward to having you back on again real soon. Thanks again.
All right. Thanks. Nice.
Hey gardeners, thanks for tuning in to our show today. We'll be right back at it here in just a moment. I just wanted to take a second here to highlight our regular videos and features here on the Urban Gardener channel. Our weekly garden journals, and our incredible featured visits.
The answer to this week's trivia question is D. Elephant garlic is known for its huge bulbs and mild, buttery onion garlic flavor. Despite this, though, it's not actually onion or garlic. It is a unique bulbing variety of leek. Thanks for watching. Head over to Sarah's Seed Shop, where right now, for a limited time, you can find elephant garlic. We also have lots of other seed varieties at unbeatable prices. Enjoy the rest of the show and have a great day.
All right, everybody. Excellent. Did you all get the answer to that trivia question this week? What a fun question this week. That one I was found to be a real surprise years ago when I'd already been growing elephant garlic for a couple of years already before I even knew that was actually true about elephant garlic, that it was actually a leek more so than it was a garlic. So all sorts of fun things like that we think of. We were just talking about cucumbers, Armenian cucumbers. Those are actually melons, I guess, more so than they are cucumbers. So, just fun things in the garden. And thanks again to Sarah at Sarah's Seed Shop. Definitely go check her out there, sarahseedshop.com, and go get some elephant garlic if you haven't grown any in your garden yet too. That'll be some really great stuff there as well. Let's see who else. I noticed that let's see here. I wanted to make sure we've got in fact, I'll do this here. Jay, I see that you're here with us. I saw that you jumped in. It's great to have you here, and great that you were able to make it. I was mentioning at the beginning of the show that you might not be here because you were traveling and doing some things, but it's good to see you here, and putting in some links there for Uncle Josh's Garden link tree there for everybody to go check out his other links to all of his different things he's got growing on there. So definitely do that. That was a great conversation. Really awesome to meet Josh there from the Plant Techie. Really great. And it's going to be really great to also meet up with our next guest as well too. But before I do that, I want to make sure that y'all know, if you have any questions or comments or anything, definitely jump into the comment section there and let us know if you have any questions, especially for our upcoming guest here too. And we'll get some questions asked of him as well too. So here we are. Let's go move on to our featured guest of the day.
You never know when you might learn something, and that's what this is about for me. These are people that I admire. Please welcome my next guest.
All right. And today we're welcoming back to the show, joining us from the UK, we've got Jason Williams, the Cloud Gardener. Thanks for joining with us again this year. It's great to have you back, Jason.
No worries. Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah. Awesome. I've been wanting to catch up with you and see how things have been growing since last year and see all of that. I know you got a really cool thing I'm going to talk about here just a little bit later on as well too, about getting to travel around the world. This is just some really cool stuff. But I know you've been, I'll just preface this conversation real quick, and I'll let you kind of tell us a little bit more about yourself and what's been growing on in the last year and all of that. But I've been following you again too, maybe similar to our first guest, Josh, maybe probably since the very beginning of what you were doing. I remember watching and seeing you putting in these gardens on this balcony of this building, just way up there. I love urban gardening and I love all that stuff. So I was really fascinated. And so I was really glad to catch your social media, catch your channel, and be able to catch your story from the very beginning, because man, what an amazing adventure you've been on since the very first little garden you started showing us in those videos on that balcony. So maybe you kind of tell us a little bit more about your story and where you've been ever since then. I mean, because if I remember right, you hadn't done much really in the gardening space up until that point, right?
That's right. So I actually have no horticultural experience, so I don't have any qualifications in it. And I moved into my apartment in March in 2020, and we just went into lockdown here in the UK, and we were only allowed to do one trip a day. We were only allowed to leave the house once a day during lockdown. Right. So we could either go to the supermarket or we could go to a garden center. And I just moved into this property. It has a balcony, and the balcony is around about 6 meters long and 1.5 meters wide. It's south facing, so it gets full sun. And I decided I have nothing else to do. I was on furlough. I used to work in hospitality. I worked 50, 60-hour weeks as a general manager, running a bar. And so when I was on furlough, it was a time to reflect and pause and enjoy actually my own time and my own space. And I was really, really lucky to have a balcony, because not every apartment in my building even has a balcony. And so I became really conscious that I have this space and I should use it. So I went to the garden center and I picked up some plants. I put them out on my balcony, but I quickly learned that gardening on a balcony is very different. And if you haven't seen my balcony is 18 floors up. So
that's right, 18. That's right. Yeah,
18 floors.
I knew it was near 20 somewhere, but yeah, 18. That's still way up there, man.
It is pretty high. And so when I started to look for content to show me how to maximize and use that space, there wasn't any. Everything was catered to ground level gardening. We have a really brilliant show here. I'm sure you may have heard of it, Gardener's World.
Yeah. And
Gardener's World is an amazing show. But at the time, it was very much focused on these large English estates or people with huge gardens. And so I never saw anything reflected in my own space. And luckily, because I was on furlough, I was able to spend quite a lot of time practicing and going by trial and error. and there was lots of error.
That's right. That's right. That's the best part of the garden experience, right? Though, when we look back on it, was all of that fun and those errors, right?
I mean, it doesn't feel like it at the time.
Not at the time, no.
but it really is. And so that's how I kind of learned to make my space and build it. And I've gone through so many different stages with this garden. When I first started it, it was all about self-sufficiency. So those first few videos that I'm sure you saw when I first got started was me trying to grow my own fruit and veg, and
Yeah.
didn't know at the time was how to pollinate my flowers and my fruit.
Right.
So-
Especially 18 floors up when
Exactly, and it's because I have a whole different set of wildlife that comes to my garden.
Mhm.
But at the time, what I was doing is I was walking up and down the garden with some cotton buds, trying to pollinate everything myself. And I remember saying, there must be a better way to do this. There must be a better way. So I started to do a bit of research, and then I learned that actually you should have some companion planting.
Yeah.
Try and get some wildlife in. And now my garden has evolved. I've got 3 ponds up in this garden. I have a fish pond on my 18th
I
floor.
know, I love it. It's just great. Like I said, and that's one of the things I love too myself, is I love gardening in the city, the urban gardener, of course, you know. I love small space gardening, utilizing unique spaces. I first got started with my channel utilizing the top of my carport. And it's a flat rooftop on my carport. So we were putting 5-gallon earth buckets up there and growing peppers up on this carport. And, you know, people and neighbors started noticing and all that sort of stuff. But it was about kind of finding and utilizing unique spaces to grow food in that we didn't normally think about. And ultimately, my actual food growing story starts with a balcony, and which is one of the things why I found your story to be so fascinating, especially being up there 18 floors. My balcony was 3 floors up. Wow. I can't imagine being another 15, you know what I mean? But yeah, it's just really great to see what you've been growing and doing there too. Let's talk just a little bit more about that garden space. What is it? What do you say? We got the 3 ponds now, and how and what types of things are you growing in that space now? You're still there, right?
Still there. So
yeah,
I grow passion fruits, kiwis, cucumbers, kales, chilies, peppers,
wow.
cucumbers, cucamelons, all sorts of different herbs. And I have an edible pond on there, which I also sell on my website, actually. So I have an edible pond, I have a pollinator pond, I have a fish pond as well. And then in terms of floral elements, I have a lot of, I've moved into perennials. So I have lots of different types of salvias. And one thing that I'm really conscious of on my garden is the fact that the wildlife is really different. So although 18 floors up, I do have pollinators, and my number 1 pollinator is not a bee.
No.
And, it's not a butterfly. I've never even had a butterfly in my garden before.
Oh yeah, they don't get up that high then.
Well, I know that they migrate that high, so they will fly and migrate up into the Gulf Stream.
But they're probably on their way somewhere else though, when they're getting up to that elevation, huh?
Yeah, and so this is like the interesting part of things. So they don't forage up here this high. However, I do have caterpillars on my garden.
Oh yeah.
So it doesn't.
So they're laying some eggs.
So, well, I had to try.
They're stopping by long enough to lay some eggs.
Well, I also have rose arches on my garden, and along the rose arches, there are festoon lights. And so, after a little bit of time, I was able to discover that I do have caterpillars, but the caterpillars are actually moths.
Yeah, some sort of moth.
So we don't often think about moths as being a pollinator. And so what that did is then that made me include things like jasmine and phlox, so that I could
Yeah.
attract more moths onto the garden, so that I have some more pollinators. So it's a really interesting. It's been a really interesting three or 4 years up here learning how
Yeah.
to manage this microclimate.
Yeah. Adam mentions, he says, I imagine the wind is a challenge that high up.
So the wind is probably my number one issue up here on this garden. And
Yeah.
I should preface that with saying that I have a glass railing on my garden. So
Okay.
uh,
So there is a little bit of block from it pushing through a little bit, right? Just a, I'm just saying.
no, there is a little bit.
Maybe, well, I suppose it would come over really hard too, huh?
Yeah, but on a day like today, so this is a rarity actually that we have sun in the UK. I don't know what's happened today. We have sun. I'm not used to
Right. What's going on?
But on a sunny day like today, it's 15 degrees warmer up here than it is on ground level, because that glass almost acts as a greenhouse.
Okay.
So that is a challenge in itself. And then the wind can just barrel through the garden. It can upend a load of my containers. But the one thing that it does, which is really, really damaging, is it will sap out the moisture in the soil, but it will also give my plants with larger leaves windburn. So I've had to learn that actually things like sunflowers, although they may be one of my favorite flowers, that's not something that I can actually grow this high up. And so I've had to change my mindset a little bit to stay away from what I see on social media and compare myself to that. And instead of growing sunflowers, I will grow smaller perennial versions, or I will opt for alpines. So I love Aquilegia, for example. So that's something that grows really, really well in my space.
Yeah, that's great. So wind might be your greatest challenge, but from what I'm hearing with all of the things that you've got growing on that, space doesn't seem to be a challenge for you for some reason. You got this little, I can't imagine it's very, very big. I mean, most balconies, we can all imagine about how big they are, but you seem to find a way to grow a lot of good stuff up there.
Well, I love the saying, where there's a will, there's a way.
Right.
I will find a way to get some plants in.
Yep.
Actually, am I able to share a screen? I can show you some images of the garden for anyone who's not seeing it.
Let's see here. Do you does it have that option for you?
Go.
I don't know if it does for your end. I'm not sure. Let's see here. Hey, look at that. All right.
Okay. So for anyone who's not seen my garden, that is what it looks like.
Right on.
So the garden itself is
yeah. Look how high up that is. I also have an issue with heights, Jason. So that would be my other issue about getting out onto your balcony garden, would be the actual heights involved.
I don't blame you, but so you can probably
love it.
See from this the glass railing and how what it looks like. But going over those arches, you can see that that is actually my passion fruit vine called Tim. Don't ask.
Tim.
I name my plants. Sorry.
That's great.
So interestingly, Tim this was 2 years ago, this picture, and Tim was growing up at the front of the garden, but everything below the glass had a full set of leaves. He was fine, but over time he began to drop all of the leaves on that arch. And again, that was because I learned that passion fruits don't like wind. So now I've removed him, and now he's on the trellis, the wooden trellis that you can see towards the front of the image.
Okay, yeah.
Around about here. And last year I had fruit on him, and this year he's now climbed back onto the arch this side. So
Oh, nice. Made his way back.
yes. Listen, you have not learned your lesson, my friend, but okay.
Plants have a mind of their own.
They
You might
really
wa-
do.
Oh yeah, look at that. There we go.
And so this was me then learning about the floral side of things. So here you can see now that I've incorporated a whole load of floral elements. So this was last year, and again, it's really, really easy, basic flowers, and that's because my number one pollinator on my garden is actually a fly, hoverflies to be exact.
Oh yeah,
So
yeah.
planting is dedicated to attracting moths, but also attracting in hoverflies. And so things like petunias, foxgloves, different types of marigolds, things that have got really easy access flowers are what I tend to go for on this garden.
That's awesome. Awesome. English Lady's Kitchen Garden was asking, what do you grow in the edible pond? What
So
specifically is in the edible pond?
yeah, in the edible pond. So that, let's see. Oh, you guys are getting a presentation. Look at this. So
Nice.
the pond actually came from my show garden at the Chelsea Flower Show. So I went to the Chelsea Flower Show in 2021 for the very first time, and the Chelsea Flower Show is probably one of the grandest flower shows in the world, if not the grandest flower show in the world.
It could very well be, yeah.
I just didn't know that at the time. I had no idea. So I went, and it was the first year that they had balcony and container gardens. And I said to myself, let me go and have a look. And the gardens were absolutely tremendous, but they had lots of plants and structures that I wouldn't necessarily find on a normal balcony. So I thought, what a great idea if there was a balcony garden that reflected reality, which I didn't know in show garden world is not something that you do. So
stepping into some new territory.
Very, very much so. And so I designed this garden, and it was based off my very own balcony. And what you see here is the sunset that I see from my garden. And on that sunset is my favorite time to be out on the garden. And when I started my balcony garden, about a year or so later, I started a social media platform just to share some of my learnings. I was still on furlough. And I think one of the things that made my platform successful was I was really open and honest about my journey with mental health, and also how gardening assisted and helped my anxiety or my depression. And so for me, the time that I enjoy the most in my garden is sunset. And that's because if I'm feeling particularly bleak that day, when you're outside and you see the lights come on all across the city, it kind of makes you feel so much better. It makes you feel like whatever issues you have, and there are plenty more people in the world going through all sorts of things. So whatever it is that you're feeling, it's not really that deep. Like, just take it back down a little bit. And so I decided to make this garden. And the goal was to show how to maximize on small spaces. So one of the things I did here was the pond I created was a whiskey barrel pond, a half a whiskey barrel pond. And in that pond, I had things like Javinica flamingo. I had taro in there. I had water lettuce, water chestnuts, watercress as well. So loads of different elements in there just to really maximize on space. And I also brought my fish with me. So my fish, train with me from Manchester to London. So the fish were with me in a bag for 2 hours on the train.
Oh, they got a nice train ride too, huh?
Yes.
Did you get them up? Did you get them up in the window? Give them some view?
Listen,
Yeah.
no, I'm not going to say anything before I get myself cancelled. But yes, they did come along with me, and I grew them from eggs actually. So I have
nice.
a
Wow.
YouTube video showing how I grew these Japanese rice fish from eggs. And the reason why I grew them is because I was getting mosquitoes in my pond, and I was looking for a safe way to get rid of the mosquito larvae from the pond. I didn't want to use any chemicals, and I came across these fish called Japanese rice fish, and the Japanese rice fish were used in rice paddies in Japan, and for the exact same reason, to take care of all the mosquitoes. And they are super hardy. They're almost like koi, so they can survive being out in winter. The pond freezes over, they'll be absolutely fine. Just go down to the bottom just like a koi would, and then once the temperatures warm up, they become.
It's amazing how resilient those koi fish are,
man.
So they're the same. That's a great idea. I love that.
Exactly. And so yeah, I
finding a natural solution to an issue. I mean, even all the way up there too. I mean, just bravo, dude. Totally.
Thank you so much. I think it's really important to try and work with nature and try to make things work the best way that they can. So
yeah, being in such a different type of situation, you would think, a lot of people who would just naturally move towards maybe a chemical solution or some other sort of way, and I just love the idea of just really looking into what you can do to find a natural, like me right now, I'm trying to find maybe a local lizard that I can try to maybe find and see if I can't get it to home up in my alleyway somewhere, so I can get a variety of lizard rolling around and maybe picking up and eating some of my earwigs and problems I've got with those. And I don't know. So I'm trying to test some of that sort of stuff out too. So I like that same sort of idea.
I think it's really important, and that's something that's kind of really stuck with me. So this was the show garden for Chelsea.
Yeah.
But over here, before rewilding, the term rewilding came popular. This was in one of these flower beds. I incorporated dandelions, which are considered as weeds here. However, on my own garden, I tend to leave weeds. I just let them do their own thing, to be honest. Because I think if you want to be here, more the merrier. But I had a bee that used to come and visit me every day, and I had these lupins, I had salvias, I had all of these amazing plants, and the first plants that this bee went to was always the red campion, was always the dandelions. And it got me thinking that if I had created this huge platform, I couldn't teach people to just grow whatever it is that they wanted, especially in the city, in an urban space, because then we end up creating a monoculture, and those insects and the wildlife will then not have the food source that they want. And so you have to have both. And that's, I think, how you try to get a bit more wildlife into the city.
Yeah, exactly. We talked a lot about that on our show last week with Cisco Morris, who's a real popular gardener here in the Pacific Northwest, but he was of the generation where he was actually leading the way. He was from these generations where, chemicals were just, sprayed around like they were nothing. And he was really leading the way in natural methods of taking care of really large-scale gardens. He was the lead gardener at Seattle University, and was winning awards for doing the things he was doing. And a big part of that was IPM, integrated pest management. And that's just bringing in bugs and trying to find and create that natural balance and try to find that in your garden spaces by bringing and introducing some of these bugs to do certain jobs, therefore also, you know, widening the amount of, or diversity of the bugs that you have in your system, therefore creating just a more natural cycle. The more the better.
Exactly. And I think that's something that I've had to learn on this garden, on my own balcony, because when I think about pests and pest management, being 18 floors up, having slugs on my garden, like I do, 18 floors up, I still have slugs. But
yeah. I remember you telling me that. I think I was just as surprised right now to be reminded of that as when you first told me last year. Slugs all the way up there too.
Slugs, 18 floors up. There is no escape from these beasts. I think what makes it even more challenging being 18 floors up is I don't have frogs, I don't have hedgehogs, I don't have birds that are going to take care of this for me. So I
don't think ducks will do too well.
Yeah. I mean, I have thought about
you got ponds, but you know, I don't know how well they'll do 18 floors up.
Exactly. So it means I have to go and manage it myself. So I will go out, I will collect up all the slugs that I can, and have to manage it myself. But again, that was me and my learnings. A natural fact, what I have here is my very own microclimate that needs managing. And so that I see is part of my job as a gardener, is to try and keep things as balanced as possible.
Yeah, in these spaces too,
Exactly.
City growing urban spaces where we're really creating garden spaces that aren't in a really natural place too, is we can integrate as many things into our garden to create that natural cycle, but we are still a part of that natural cycle though too. We do have to be kind of the pickup where things can't and don't work so well, especially like you're saying with those slugs and maybe other things in other spaces for others as well.
Exactly. And that's although my work started off as balcony gardening, it's kind of now expanded into green spaces in urban areas. And so I did a show garden last year, which I think I might even have some images of. And that was something that I'm not sure that you guys have over in the States. Oh,
there's you with the Queen.
So yes,
bless the Queen.
God bless the Queen. That was a really special moment. In fact, that was her very last outing before she passed away.
Yeah.
The president who was sat next to her of the RHS, he brought her to the balcony in Container Gardens, and mine was the only garden that she stopped at, and she called me over.
Oh, wow.
The first thing she said was, "I do quite like your roses."
Oh, man, how awesome. What a blessing for you in your life, though, right? Just something to always be able to look back on like that. To have her pull you out and say that and everything too. Just I remember when you shared about that too, and I just thought that was just so great and special, because I think if anybody knows her story and her life too, they know that she loves her gardens and the garden shows too. She was always, you know, present doing those sort of things as well too there. So that's just really special.
Exactly. And I had around about 5
again, a part of this amazing adventure you've been on now in just these last few years is just unbelievable, Jason.
You know, I haven't actually taken the time to reflect a little bit, because everything is just full on. But this really was one of my best moments, I think. But yeah, the garden I did last year was all about alleyways. So
see, I did want to get into that because I wanted to mention that too. I'm an alleyway gardener.
You do have them.
What's that?
So you do have alleyway gardens.
We do have alleyways. I'm not sure about how many actual alleyway gardeners there are out in the world. I'd like to see more of us out there. But I was inspired by my neighbor, actually, when I first moved here. My alleyway runs right along the side of my place here. So right out my kitchen door, there's an alleyway runs right this way, and then there's another one that kind of runs like a T through the middle of the block. So we got kind of two different ones.
Yeah.
And through his inspiration, I started, growing alongside all the different alleyway spaces as well too. So that's another big part of the thing that we like to talk about on our channel and in our urban garden is other urban gardening spaces that we don't normally think of. And there's so many alleyway spaces throughout cities, throughout the whole US and throughout the world, and I loved this alleyway project that you did. I remember seeing plenty of the posts and pictures, some of these very ones here too. But yeah, tell us a little bit more about this. This is just really great.
So over the past 2 years, I have been appointed as a local nature champion for Manchester. And part of my job is to help my local government find grey spaces and turn them green.
Yeah.
And one of the areas where this is really successful here in Manchester and across the northwest of England are alleyways. And so what you see here is just some examples of some alleyways that I came across when I was studying how to make an alleyway show garden.
Mm-hmm.
But Manchester itself was actually the first industrial city in the world.
Yeah.
And we have a really strong heritage here when it comes to alleyways. And so this is the standard type of housing that you would see in Manchester.
Okay.
So what you'll have is you'll have these long streets, all the houses in a row, and in between the houses, there'll be a long alleyway.
Okay.
And each one of these apartments, or each one of these houses will probably be a 2-bedroom house. So we call them 2 up, 2 down. So there'll be a kitchen, a front room, and then 2 bedrooms upstairs and a bathroom. And these terraced houses were built and designed for factory workers. And so the toilets used to be outside in the garden. Well, they don't have gardens, they have courtyards. So they're all paved,
Right.
so no grass in any of these back gardens.
Okay. Yeah.
The toilet would be outside. And the reason why they would have the alleyway is because they would have the coal delivered by horse and cart through
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
alleyway. Your milk would get delivered to your back door. And so that's how it used to be. Now, fast forward to 2024, it's a very different story. A lot of these alleyways are filled with rubbish, they're fly-tipped, and it's only the landlords who are the worst culprits because they will renovate these new properties and then just chuck the bathtubs, the sink, the toilets, they'll just leave all of the mess in the alleyway.
In the alleyway. Yeah.
So what that then does is it then attracts antisocial behavior. It attracts pests and vermin into the area. And so communities decided to take it upon themselves to clear some of these alleyways and turn them into gardens to make sure that these spaces were not left to air.
Yeah. Kind of bring them back to life, maybe transform them into more of a social space for neighborhoods and neighbors to, interact with each other and that sort of thing as well too,
Exactly that. And I came across this alley, and this alley is in Moss Side in North Manchester. And I met some of the community here, and this particular community, they had a really strong set of residents who were passionate about the garden. And this particular area, Moss Side, where this alley has a very high student population. Manchester's got the highest population of students, I think almost in Europe, actually.
Oh, wow.
And
From
so,
industrial to education.
Exactly. And so what happens is the students are there up until July, and then once term's over, they go back home. So you can just imagine as a community gardener trying to get people invested. You get them invested after a bit of time, but then they leave.
Yeah.
And so you're in this constant cycle. But this particular alleyway had six or seven kind of permanent residents. So I was happy enough to work with them, and I decided that I was going to reverse engineer my show garden.
Oh, right.
In show garden world, you would design a show garden, go and get your funding, get your support, and then you might find a charity, or you might try and find a home for it. And then you, after the show, you give that garden to your chosen charity or organization, and then you split the garden up and you make it work in that space. Whereas this garden, I wanted to gift it to this community, and that meant for me that if I wanted them to be invested in the garden, they needed to have their own wants and desires in this garden.
Yeah.
So I did multiple consultations with the community to find out what it is that they wanted from the space. And everybody wanted something completely different. Some people wanted to grow veg. Some people just wanted flowers. Some people wanted red flowers. Some people wanted weeds. Some people wanted to upcycle. Some people hated upcycle. And so I remember leaving the consultation thinking, what the hell have I done?
Trying to manage a lot of different people and their ideas and expectations. Yeah, you got yourself a heck of a project.
It was a madness. But, you know, if I was to ask everybody who's on today or watching today, what does gardening mean to you? We would probably all have very, very different ideas of what gardening means to you. So when I thought about it like that, it actually made sense that everybody along the street wanted a different thing from the garden, because everybody's garden is different. So I made sure to incorporate some of their wants and desires into the garden. And there was one lady called Gemma. She had a tortoise, and her tortoise was called Mr. Tortellini.
Oh, yes. That's great.
And Mr. Tortellini would eat dandelions in the cobbles, but the council will come along and they will spray the alleyways with this weed killer. So she said, Jason, I just want somewhere where it's safe for Mr. Tortellini. So I made a whole section of the garden just for Mr. Tortellini.
Yeah, a no spray zone. That's great.
And this is just a snapshot. So we were talking about pets this particular day when we were working on the alleyway, and everybody brought their pets out. And you know, we didn't know that that Lewis had a hedgehog or that Nora had a budgie, and it's so inspiring that actually this garden has been a connector for this community.
It's amazing though, and that's what the world needs a lot more of. And that's like one of the things I always talk about, or you know, and especially this year too, especially for us here in the US. You know, you guys probably had a little bit yourself over in the UK, but this year's gonna be a tough time, and it's always good for us to be able to find common ground, and that's what a garden space is for. And you know, we're all of different people, of different backgrounds, doing different things. And when you talk about and mention about how, you know, if you ask somebody what they think about as far as a garden or garden space, we're going to get all these different ideas and different answers. But that's where I think all the amazing things can come alive, is through all these different ideas and these different ways that we think about these spaces and stuff. Because, you know, then we can create together, we can utilize this common ground together. And I think that's exactly what you're really excelling at in putting this project together here with this alleyway space.
100%. I think don't get me wrong, it has its challenges, and I'm really careful to not over glamorize this, because it is a challenge, and it's a challenge coalescing people. And what makes this particular project work is the fact that I tend to have the final veto, the final say on things. And it's kind of better that way, because I'm an external element to the alley. So they can bitch and blame me, but I don't have to live there and deal with the consequences of the decision.
Well, it's no doubt an outside neutral arbiter to the different things. So I think that probably does make for a great way for everybody to settle different things that might be popping up in the spaces.
100%. And oftentimes, sometimes you get clouded. Things get cloudy, but I come in and I just call it how I see it and straight down the line. It's like, well, actually, this is not going to work here because of this, this, this. So let's just go back to the drawing board and try this, this, this. And ultimately, people listen, and things work. But it's been a really interesting project. So this here is the final show garden. So this is how the garden looked at the show, and it looks very homely.
That's great. I mean, I like how you just set up a couple of walls there, just as wide as an alleyway, and yeah, that's nice.
40 meters long. We had solar lights all the way down, and the RHS gave me the funding, so they funded this show garden. But what I did was, when I did the consultations, I asked what is it that you needed. And so in order to make this garden successful and a real life working garden, I bought them greenhouses, cold frames, potting benches, seed collecting stations, everything to make this a legacy garden. And so the charm of this garden is that you walked down and it felt like a real garden as opposed to a show garden, but it still had show garden elements to it. And so this, for example, you'll see that I used a bathtub as a planter.
That's great.
And
they're throwing them out there anyways, right?
Well, that actually came from the alley. So a week before the show, one of the landlords had completely fly tipped the alley, and I said, okay, look, we're going to use this as a planter. We're going to repurpose it and reclaim that.
Yeah, perfect.
So we used that as a planter, and it was absolutely stunning. And then you see that metal structure. It looks like some kind of sculpture that I had designed, but in actual fact, it's a trampoline.
Oh yeah, okay, yeah, there you go. Perfect.
And once again, that is simply because trampolines, when it's windy here, they're the first things that go missing after a storm. 3 gardens down there. That's right.
Taking flight.
Exactly. So I said, okay, no, we'll use that. We'll make a planter out of this. And what was unusual about this garden is the plant quality. Now, when you do a show garden, plant quality is really, really important. You get highly judged and marked on it. Because this was a feature garden, I wasn't judged. Nice. But the planting all came from this, all the fruit and veg and salads and leafy greens. They were all grown by All Saints Catholic School. And these kids in their primary school have a garden club every Monday. And they grew those plants for me for 3 months.
Wow.
I absolutely could not care about the plant quality. And if that garden was judged, I would have quite happily have got a bronze medal or not scored a medal at all, because for me, the goal was to get these children growing. And the reason why these children were in gardening club is because the vast amount of them, they live in apartments like myself. They don't actually have alley gardens, or even balconies. They have no outside space. So their parents put them into gardening club to allow them to have that connection back to nature. And so, like, creating these memories for the children for me was so important. What
does he say in England? Brilliant, right?
Yes,
brilliant. Just brilliant.
Thank you.
That's what I'm saying. I love it, man. And here's something I actually wanted to address. Rob's from the UK as well too, and he said this here too. And I just want to kind of address this a little bit, because I also know from a couple of other people I've talked to. He's like, if that alley garden was in was it Leicester? I can't pronounce that quite right, but it would last 2 days before it was vandalized or pinched. Now, one of the things I found, though, too, because I grow right outside my downtown in an alleyway and all of that, is that, every now and then someone's going to drop some litter. Every now and then someone's going to do something, maybe even grab something off of one of the plants or something like that. It happens every now and then. for the most part, what I find when it comes to us getting into these urban spaces and these urban areas, especially in neighborhoods where you've got kids who live in these apartments and tall buildings and places where they just don't have access to plants, it's also not just kids, it's also the kids inside of us too, who live in these urban spaces, who don't get to see nature very often, who don't get to see some of this sort of stuff. And locals who grow things, especially if there's some really good people and that sort of stuff who set up these sort of projects and these do these sort of things, what I usually find in the stories is people who kind of gather around these sort of spaces. They kind of find a respect for these sort of spaces because it's something that they don't normally get in their lives. Like you're saying about these kids and stuff and being able to grow plants and do these sort of things. So these sort of projects, whether it is in a place that's, I'm sorry, I can't pronounce it. Is it Leicester?
Leicester.
Leicester?
Yeah.
Okay. So it's, even if it's a place like this, and this might be a place where, you know, you might see a lot of vandalism and a lot of sort of stuff like that. I think these sort of gardening projects are exactly what these places need. I think these sort of things are where, you know, you kind of bring people together again to around plants and nature and things that they don't normally get in their lives. And you kind of create an escape in the spaces that they live in which I find is a case. There's a really great gardener down in LA who found this. He was in, you know, he was in a very rough neighborhood. And he started planting a garden right outside on his parkway. It was just one of these little strips right outside the street, and started growing right out there. And the neighborhood kids and gangs and all of that started coming around, and he started showing them, and they got interested. And the next thing you know, it was something that neighborhood actually treasured, even though, you know, things where, you know, can get vandalized, and it will still possibly happen. And I think it's still worth the effort of putting something together to find those sort of things happening.
So it's a very interesting story, this. And when I designed this garden, and then I decided that it was going to be relocated to Moss Side, to this community. Moss Side is a very it's not an affluent area at all, and so it's a lot of social housing, and people don't have money in this area. And without going into the politics of things, we've seen a dramatic decrease in things like community centers and community programs for children and for youths. So they don't particularly have anything to do. And the vandalism that happens in these areas is not actually just from youths. It can be older people. I'm sure it's the same where you are, but there are a lot of unhappy, miserable people out there. And one of the things that was really interesting to me was just seeing how this garden has affected this community. So I'm not sure if, can you still see the presentation?
Oh, I can put it back up. Yeah.
So
there we go.
This is what the alleyway looked like after we relocated it. And so now you can see the children playing up and down the alleyway. This section here at the front left, that's Mr. Tortellini's section.
Okay, excellent.
And you can just see how it's transformed this community and how it's given this safe space. But last week, the alley was vandalized, that the lights were taken down, plants were stolen, planters were damaged. And I think, luckily, the community were upset, but we expect this. It's really sad that you expect it, but it doesn't get any less hurtful when it happens. But those incidents are so far in between that it doesn't outweigh the good that the project has done. And like you were saying, actually, it's more of a case of this has happened, you put it on social media, people are outrage in the area. And when you see that level of outrage from local communities, people then think twice about go in and dismantle this, because they see how much it's upset people.
Yep.
So we've now managed to get some gates authorized by the local council, and in fact that was a 5-year process. So that started before I was even involved with the community. It just seems to have sped up now that there's a lot of PR around this. But it's a sad story, actually, because yes, there are now going to be 4 gates. So this alley is like a T, almost like yours. So there are four gates that are going onto this alley. This whole process cost the council £20,000. And the reason why it's so expensive is because it has to go through a court system to change the alleyways from essentially being a highway to private.
Oh, okay.
A whole load of court fees. And then every resident along the alleyway has to be issued a key to access the gates. And also emergency services have to have a key to that gate as well, so that they can get fire trucks down or police cars down, whatever. Now, with the gates going on, that's now going to protect the community. So a few more of the community members have said, listen, as soon as the gates are up, I will spend more time out on the garden, or I will start to garden on there. I just don't feel safe. The caveat to that is a lot of people walk down this alleyway if they're on a dog walk or if they're on their bikes or something, just to experience the garden. They're now no longer going to be able to do that. So it's sad.
It's not
It's now gone from a public space to now a private space. But from the outside looking in, although as much as I would love for it to still be public, I don't live there. I don't know how I would feel if I didn't feel safe. And so
and in the long run, I think sometimes it takes time, you know, and in that sort of process, as you were talking about too, you know, is that at first, you know, you got people who are putting things out, doing the work, and then maybe something happens, an incident, then there's an outcry, and then people start to hear about the outcry. So then there becomes less of that. And maybe there might be something down the road again, but the more and more the community takes on that space themselves and what it means to them and all of that too, the more and more likelier it becomes more of a respected space. And again, I've just seen and heard stories about this around in other cities as well too. There's another great story of some community gardens and spaces, I think out of Detroit as well too. And just some other really big, really urban spaces in you know, in some cities around the US here that I've heard about, where it's just really, it's the resilience of the people who live there. And then building these sort of spaces also brings in people who probably would likely be the vandals.
Exactly.
You know, eventually come in and become and participate and all of that. And that's kind of what I think the gentleman down in LA really found when he started his project. I mean, he went through some ups and downs, you know, as any sort of project will do. But once the community really starts to grab a hold of that and seeing the value it has for them, then those sort of things. And that's why I just always encourage more and more of that stuff, you know. And again, too, like you said, you don't have to live there. So, you know, if the locals say that's something that they like to keep and keep it private and that sort of thing, then that's something that I suppose that they can understand, that we can understand them doing. But you know, public facing stuff is always the best. We want people to see these beautiful gardens. We want people to participate. And that's one thing I love about my alleyway is a lot of my neighbors now, like you said, walk their dogs, ride their bike through, you know, come walking through. They'll talk to me about things growing on and all that stuff. And, you know, it's just really a great way to, you know, build community.
Exactly that.
All right. Well, I've had you here all this time. Now I want to talk about something. I know this is more like UK centered in a sense, as far as what it's all about ultimately, because I guess it's what is it, to improve access to green spaces in urban areas within the UK. But still, this is a great adventure, and again, to kind of carries on what I want to kind of continue here as I'm telling everybody, and you know, people who might be just getting know you here right on the show right now is that, again, you started off without really any horticultural experience at all. You put together a balcony gardening space and started sharing it with everybody. People caught on and wanted to know more. And again, too, we talked about, and you mentioned it, I'd love to have you back again too sometime to really just kind of focus in maybe a little bit more about mental health and what our gardens do for people going through that stuff. I too have had similar situations. I think we could come up with a great roundtable to have a great discussion on that sometime. We should. But you know, you're doing this, you're building this up, you get all this sort of following. I myself start following you and all this sort of stuff. And the next thing you know, you're doing all these things. Now you're a garden designer, you're doing all these shows, you're talking to the queen, well, you know, and all of this sort of stuff. And now you've been awarded this, what they call the Churchill Fellowship. And now your country is going to send you out to, like, what is this, Milan, Barcelona, China, Singapore, so that you can go out and learn about gardening and urban spaces and things like that as well. You want to tell us a little bit more about what this is that you won, kind of how that came about, and then what it is that you're going to go out and do?
So we have an issue here in the UK, and it's based around gentrification and redevelopment. And Manchester, where I live, when you look at a map of Manchester, 51% of Manchester is green and 49% of it is grey. Yeah. And our grey areas are the nucleus of our city, the centre. And so if we wanted to build more housing in Manchester, what we'd have to do is go and start digging up our greenbelt land, which is protected.
Yeah.
So the best option is to redevelop the city centre. So if you remember those images of industrial Manchester, what that looked like with all of those factories, a lot of those factories are now brownfield sites, so they'll be sat there unused. And so what developers will do is they will take over these brownfield sites, and then they will knock them down and then put up these giant towers and skyscrapers, which is fine because we need the housing, but oftentimes those redevelopments are expensive. They are far more expensive than what the regular person can afford. And then they also don't have much green space. In fact, the green space is always the afterthought. And so I got to thinking, how can we make our towns and cities greener? And it was just after I finished the alleyway project, and I was thinking, there's got to be better ways to do this. And I did a bit of research, and I thought, well, wouldn't it be great if we could connect the developers up to the community and get them to initiate some kind of community growing projects? And I approached a couple of developers, and they told me no, it couldn't be done, or that they liked the idea, but they didn't agree with the concept. And one particular developer had told me that it would be a PR disaster. And I said,
interesting thought.
It's really interesting, actually, just to be sat in a boardroom with them and listen to their reasoning, because it's incredible. They felt, and actually it was more than one developer who said this, but they felt that it would be a PR disaster if it was seen that they were offsetting the costs of the gardening and green space to the community. And I said, but you've done everything you can to not involve the community in the process of you building this building.
Right.
Because what normally happens here in the UK is they might buy a piece of land, but they will make sure that the residents, the local community, are the last people to know about it, and they only have shorter space of time to then contest that through the courts. So they will do everything they can to circumvent the residents. So I was like, well, you've done everything you can to circumvent them there, so why is this any different?
Yeah,
But
exactly.
it was a hill that they were willing to die on. So I said, okay. So this year I did the RHS Urban Show, and it was the first indoor flower show in the UK. I know you have the Philadelphia Flower Show, which is indoors, right? But
Yeah, that's a big one.
it's huge. I can't wait. Hopefully, I'm going next
And we
year.
have the one I go to in Seattle called the Northwest Flower and Garden Show. That's the first really big one of the year for us in the States.
Really?
Seattle. Yep.
Oh, right. Okay. I'm taking notes now.
Yeah, you got to come to Seattle, and if you do, you better let me know.
I promise I will. And so at the RHS Urban Show, I created 7 gardens in total. So 4 of them were balcony gardens, and I designed those with students from Manchester Metropolitan University. They had no form of experience of gardening whatsoever. So I went to class and I taught them every Wednesday for 2 hours for 2.5 months. And I taught them what's a seed, what's a perennial, what's an annual, all the way up to how to design a space. And with a Chelsea balcony garden, the budgets for one of those balconies are around about £50,000.
Oh, wow.
That is not the kind of money that a resident here in the UK would have.
For sure.
Especially as a renter. And just for those who are not in the UK, renting here is very different. As a renter, you cannot make any changes to your apartment at all. So you cannot paint the walls. You can't drill into your balcony and put shelves in or anything like that. You can't do anything like that. You have to get clearance from your landlord first to be able to do stuff like that. And you will have more success at implementing changes if you have a private landlord. But if you live in an apartment like mine, you've got no chance.
Yeah.
So I gave my students a budget of £500, and they had to build me gardens with £500. I created a shade garden with a garden centre, and then I created an urban farm. And the urban farm was designed to show these developers that rather than putting a whole load of concrete as your green space, you could create an allotment space within the tower block, so that the community could come downstairs and use the allotment space. And with these buildings that are going up now across Manchester, I'm looking at one now. So this one was built 2 years after I moved in. So I've said earlier that I've got full sun. I now don't have full sun at all. They've now
You're getting shaded out with a new building, huh?
Shaded out. And so this one in front of me is now 57 stories. It was once a car park when I moved in, but it's now 57
rooftops. Do they do any rooftop stuff?
No. It's the thought process.
Yeah. And I think that's going to be something again, too. Like you're saying, you're going to be traveling around to some of these other cities and other places of the world, especially like China, Singapore. Asian cities are amazing with their green spaces and what they do in their building and implementing those sort of things. I've got a friend who's over working with some people right now in Vietnam doing some stuff, and just that's where I think you're going to find a treasure trove of things and ideas and those sort of stuff for this.
Yeah, it's really interesting because here we have something called biodiversity net gain. And what that, for me, it doesn't actually work, this concept. It almost is like greenwashing. But biodiversity net gain essentially says that if a development was to buy a car park, for example, so they take that land that was once a car park, 10% of that land has to go back to biodiversity. They have to leave it better than when they found it. So if it was just a car park, then they can just put a couple of shrubs outside, and that's enough. Those plants are also low maintenance, so they don't have to do too much with it. But what they could also do is they could also not use that 10%. They could plant 1 million trees somewhere else, and then instead of having that 10% back to biodiversity, they can build new flats in there. And my issue is that when they plant those 1 million trees somewhere else, those 1 million trees go off and die because they plant the wrong trees, and no one looks after them. But they've ticked all of the boxes for BNG, so they don't care. Whereas when we look at somewhere like China or Singapore, Singapore especially, that is not the case. And their version of biodiversity net gain sees some of the developers having to put upwards of, I think it's almost 80 to 100% back into green space. Hence why they've got green walls, they have green roof terraces, because they are forced via policy to have to do that.
Yeah.
And so my goal is to go and figure out what those policies are and then bring them back to the UK so that I can get them implemented into policy here. And so I'm presenting my findings back to Kew Gardens, to the National Trusts, to RHS, and to the local government here. And the goal would be to take elements of my findings and implement them into policy so that next year, when the green policies are laid out in Manchester between the 10 of the 11 boroughs, some of that will be in there. So it could be that we force the developers to have to put roof terrace gardens on, or have to put containers on all new balconies.
Yep.
All little things like that. But equally so, as excited as I am about going to see Singapore, I've seen from pictures, so I know that Singapore is going to be really beautiful, but I'm really interested in the local community. Does the local community live in these wonderful green towers, or do they live on the outskirts and have to travel in?
Yeah, good questions.
And so for me, I know how developers and how these corporations in the UK work. If I come back and provide this information and this data, they will find a way that they profit from this, and that us in the city will get priced out even more. So for my goal,
I think maybe the trick is to try to find out how you can get them to kind of profit and work for you at the same time.
Exactly that. And so that's what my findings are. And so
a little bit for both kind of thing.
Exactly. It's got to work for everybody. If we're going to make our towns and cities greener, the council's got to be making better decisions, but the developers have to change their mindsets. And then also the local residents need to learn or be taught how to use these spaces and be encouraged to use those spaces. And you've picked up that I've chosen China and Singapore, but I've also chosen Milan and Barcelona. And in my interview process, they asked me, well, why have you selected so many countries? In my mind, it's because I was like, oh, I want a holiday.
Yeah, for real, exactly, right?
Money's worth. But
this is my bucket list you're looking at here.
Like, you wouldn't want a free trip to Milan. No. No. So interestingly, with China and Singapore, governmentally is very different to the UK.
Yeah.
So those developers, they don't have a choice. They will do as they are told. So that's one element of it. The planting in Singapore is not planting that would work here. So I can't take some of the it will look really beautiful, but I can't bring the planting knowledge back here and implement that here because that wouldn't work. Statistically, Manchester and the UK as a whole is supposed to achieve the same temperatures as Barcelona by 2050. Yeah. So it makes sense for me to go and investigate the planting that Barcelona is using now through their droughts. So they're going through a period of drought. Work out what the developers are doing there. Work out what the green spaces are doing in Milan, and then bring that information back and cross-reference that with what I find in Asia to make the perfect kind of planting plans that will work.
Yeah, that's good stuff, man. I really like the idea, and I think even more so some of that information could be used not just for the UK, but other places, just kind of the idea of how you can start implementing these sort of green spaces in urban environments is just really kind of important as we are continuing to grow as a human population across the globe, and being able to go around and see how other people are doing that sort of stuff. I just wish I could kind of pack myself into one of your bags there and just kind of ride along with you and do this sort of trip, but it's going to be really, really amazing, Jason. And I can't wait to, kind of catch up with you afterwards. That's something for sure is we'll have to have you back on to talk about these adventures and these things that you found, and maybe kind of give us a presentation here on the show for what you found and that you'll be presenting over there for, for this fellowship. It's just really, really amazing. Again, your story is just awesome. I love it. It's just, again, it was just really great for you to come back on here again and have this conversation with us. So definitely thanks again for coming here today.
No worries. Thank you so much. And normally with the Churchill Fellowship, what you're meant to do is write a 10,000 word dissertation. However, I'm very, very lucky that I'm going to be able to do vlogs instead. So what I'll be doing is a weekly vlog in each city that I'm in. So you'll get to kind of come along on this journey with me. So
are you going to be doing that on your YouTube channel?
On my YouTube channel, yeah.
Oh man, well, how nice of them to change the rules for you there too, so you get away with doing that. So yeah, definitely, because everybody who's watching right now, get down in the description below, because there's a link to that channel there too, so you can go check that out. Go subscribe to Jason, follow along with him on this great gardening adventure around the world, finding about making urban green spaces accessible. I think this is just a great mission. I hope that you really dig in, have some fun, but also really find out some really good information and really maybe help us figure this out a little bit better in some other spaces as well too.
Will do. Thank you so much.
You got it. You got it. All right, hold on a little bit and I'll talk to you a little bit after the show there for real quick. But definitely thanks again, Jason, for spending your time today, sharing with us all about your gardens and your the cloud garden up in your apartment, just amazing stuff, and all this other great stuff that you've been on. Just what an incredible story. I'll just say one last time is that, I always sit there and look at like where I was since I first started my first cucumber like 13 years ago or so, and how I'm doing this show. And if you'd have told me where I'd be today back then, I would have told you there's absolutely no way, you're crazy. And I'm sure you feel the same way, because I think your story is just as incredible.
Thank you. It's exactly the same. I can't believe it.
All right, Jason, thank you so much. It's really great to have you here, and we'll see you back again real soon.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
You got it. All right. What another great conversation with Jason, again, joining with us again on the show. Again, just what a unique type of growing experience that he has there too. Like I said, I started on an apartment balcony years ago, but here's Jason, 18 floors up on this building, and starting just an amazing gardening adventure. And there's just so many things about his story that we can't even really cover it in just the time that we have here for the show. So we'll definitely have to have Jason back for some other conversations to talk a little bit more about some of those things that we've touched on here today, and as well on the previous interview that we did with him as well too. So what a great show today. All of our really great conversations here with everybody. Well, how awesome was it to get to meet Josh just a little bit earlier today from the Plant Techie. Thanks again, Josh, for joining with us today on the show. And again, too, everybody, I hope you all come and join with us tomorrow. I'm not sure exactly what we've got going on for the Sunday edition. It's we're up in the air a little bit, but we'll be here. It'll be 11 a.m. Pacific Standard Time for the Sunday edition of Let's Get Growing. And we'll figure something out here to get the conversation going and talking about all sorts of things in our gardens. There's always a fun conversation when it comes to gardening, and we just love having those conversations right here on the Let's Get Growing show, and having all of you here with us as well too. So if you are here with us at the end of the show, definitely again hit that like button if you haven't already. Click the thumbs up, click the subscribe button if you haven't yet already. Click the bell notifications to be notified of upcoming videos and live streams, and as well share with all your friends and let them know about our really awesome show that we've got here each and every Saturday and Sunday on the Urban Gardener channel. Awesome, awesome, awesome. Oh, one last thing too. Let's not forget to mention that we do have our Urban Gardener growing community. It's our gardening group on Facebook. There's a link down below in the description as well too. This is a great place for you to go and share all of your garden spaces and what you've got growing on. I love seeing what you all have growing on in your gardens. So go and join with us here at the Let's Get Growing group and share with us all of your garden spaces. I love to see all of those as well too. So again, thank you all so much for joining with me here today. And again, come and join with us tomorrow for another great episode of the Let's Get Growing show. And I'll see all of you then.